producers and small-scale producers in 100 countries of the world. I mean, this shows you how the global gap standard is relevant for food safety concerns all around the world today. And there are about 150 certification bodies who administer the global gap standard on behalf of the global gap organization. Now, in the case of Kenya particularly, smallholders have challenges with meeting the global gap standard. Why? They have very small farm sizes. And with very small farm sizes, it's not economical to cover the cost of certification, of auditing, which is one of the concerns why some of them were excluded. Well, the cost of certification is very high, and particularly recertification is a concern. In the first year, you can be helped by exporters or by donors to be certified, but in the second year, it becomes a problem. And this is a case with the Kenyan small-scale producers. They have missing capacities in terms of knowledge. The global gap standard requires that you understand, you are able to manage, you have some, there are technical elements of the standards, like I mentioned, issues relating to traceability, relating to managing your farm sites, the history of the farm site, and to an average producer who perhaps has not gone beyond secondary school, this is a challenge. And a lot of them are not able to meet up with the global gap standard. You need a lot of investment in infrastructure, in pack houses, in storage, chemical storage facility. You have to have irrigation facilities in place, a whole lot of stuff that small-scale producers are not able to do. And the global gap standard also requires that you stick to the principles of IPM, integrated pest management. But for most smallholders, they apply fertilizer whenever they want. Their practices goes in contrast to what the global gap standard requires. And of course, for a lot of them, they are not able to link the supply chain, both at the domestic level and at the export level. Well, a quick one about Kenya. Kenya is an East African country, 34 million people. Capital is Nairobi. Of course, a number of other important cities like Eldoret, Kisumu, Thika, Mombasa, and the rest. The GDP as of 2009, just a little above $30 billion. Agriculture contributes 24% to the GDP, and 70% of Kenyans depend on the agricultural sector. The important sector of Kenya, as at now, horticulture is the leading sector, followed by tourism and tea. Well, Kenya has a tropical climate, and there are two seasons: the long season of long rain and the other season of short rain. The fruits and vegetables subsector of Kenya accounts for 46% of the total horticultural production. Well, when we are talking about horticulture, we're talking about fruits and vegetables, and also flowers and ornamental. So, fruits and vegetables is a part of the bigger horticultural subsector of Kenya. It's private sector driven, which means the government has almost limited interference. There is what is called the Fresh Produce Export Association of Kenya. It's an umbrella body of all exporters, and they direct or govern what goes on in this subsector. The subsector was valued at 1.1 billion in 2007, and of course dominated by a lot of smallholders scattered across the country. About 1.5 million of them depend on the subsector. And in terms of the commonly grown fruits and vegetables, I have some, well, these are not all the commonly grown, but for reasons of space, I just have a few listed. Avocado, mango, the commonly grown fruits, fresh beans, sugar snap, baby corn as part of the commonly grown vegetables. In terms of the destination market of Kenya's exports, figure from January to June last year shows that 50% of Kenya's fruits goes to France, and about 60% of its vegetables go to the United Kingdom. Now, this is where the concern is. When the global gap standard was introduced into Kenya as Europe Gap in 2003, there were misinformation as to what the standard really stands for. I guess this was where the misinformation came from. the fact that it has EU, a lot of the producers misconstrued it for the European Union traceability requirement. So in the media, there were a lot of issues as to what the impact of this would be on smallholder economy, on poverty reduction, and apparently a lot of donors sprung into action and were all development agenda. They needed to fund projects, they needed to support smallholders to be able to link the high value chains. Well, by 2005, the requirements, the global gap standard became a requirement to access the export market, which created a lot more problems. And when the global gap standard was introduced, initially, prior to its introduction, the supply chain in Kenya was more of a supply chain that brokers and middlemen had a lot of impact. But with the global gap standard, the relationship changed. It became contractual agreements, and that was also a big challenge for most smallholders who could not understand business as agriculture as a business. And again, 60% of them were excluded, and donors and exporters showed some support. Why am I doing this research? Sorry. Why am I doing this research? The justification for this research is that despite all the interventions that came from 2003 till 2009, it was discovered that most of those projects ended up as mere projects, and the overall objective of linking smallholders to high value chain was still not achieved. And smallholders still could not link the export and the high value chain opportunities. And if you look at this diagram, this is a present figure from the Global Gap Organization. Kenya got a lot of donor support. In spite of that, there are presently only 207 certified producers, and most of these producers are large-scale producers, which means the impact of all these attempts at linking producers to supply chain still did not yield the much desired result. From this gap, Kenya is the sixth in this gap. This is a graph showing 10 African producers. You will discover that even Morocco has more certified producers, Egypt has more, Burkina Faso has more, and Tunisia and South Africa respectively. Now the objective of this research, I wanted to understand how well all the challenges that the standard brought into Kenya have been managed till date. I also wanted to see the different approaches that stakeholders have put in place. Have they really worked, or are we just wasting resources in this case? And the methodology, I came up after extensive literature search and consultation with some key researchers in this field, came up with this conceptual framework. The introduction of the Global Gap Standard brought, like I said, some challenges, and these challenges are captured in 4 different areas. It brought some technical challenges, financial, managerial, and market access. This framework is so important because this is an attempt to really give a holistic view to what is going on. A lot of the researches before now were just focusing on the financial element. Some of them were just talking about the technical element. But certification is not an end. It's a means to an end. So it's important to look at the whole system and see what is really going on. And this was what informed this conceptual framework. The conceptual framework I showed was to be able to achieve the first objective. Now, in achieving the second objective, I came up with what is called the donor-led and exporter-led approach, because all the different interventions could be categorized basically as exporter-led and donor-led interventions. And you can see the pictures of the graphic representation of some important donors that were active. DFI, the Department for International Development of the UK, the Collier ACP, which is an EU-funded project, GICA, Japan, Kia, Kenya, and a very important GTZ. Well, exporters, FP, which is the umbrella association of all exporters, and important exporters like VECPRO, East African growers, and the rest of them. In terms of the data collection exercise, the approach was qualitative. Why? Because I wanted to get some insight into what was going on.